Today on CityCast Nashville, we're sitting down with Giancarlo Guerrero, the music director of the Nashville Symphony. It's his final season at the helm after 17 years, so before he packs up and moves to Florida, where he'll lead the Sarasota Orchestra, we wanted to give him a chance to talk about what makes our symphony stand apart from all the rest. We'll also discuss his celebrity collaborations over the years and why it's not your grandparents' classical music anymore. Hopefully, our conversation will inspire you to head down to the Schermerhorn before his final concert in May. It's Tuesday, February 4th. I'm your executive producer, Whitney Pastorek, and this is what Nashville's talking about. Giancarlo, it is so great to have you here. I know that you're a busy man as you are going about wrapping up what will be your final season as our full-time music director here in Nashville. I know you're going to stay on as our laureate, and we'll get into that. But I want to start by saying, just so everybody out there knows, my parents were symphony musicians. My mom and dad, Chris and Red Pastorek, played in the Houston Symphony Orchestra for 45 and 50 years, respectively. And I read an interview with you in the Houston Press, Giancarlo, where you said when you were at Baylor for your undergrad that you looked up to the Houston Symphony like they were baseball players. So thank you for considering my mom and dad to be your heroes.
Well, I always think, when I came to school from Costa Rica, the Houston Symphony was actually one of the first orchestras, great orchestras that I had got to hear live. And they made such an impact on me that, a couple of decades later, I came back and conducted the orchestra, and that's kind of a dream come true. But I guess I have a very special relationship with that band, and I guess you were an orchestra brat,
such a brat.
Up, and you know all of the orchestra jokes and all the conductor jokes, especially. So it's a wonderful ensemble. It's a great band, and when I was there, Christoph Eschenbach was the music director. So long time ago.
I remember him well. I remember being terrified of him as a child. Not as scared as I was of Commissiona, but really scared still of Eschenbach.
Oh, yes. That they don't make the maestros like they used to, the Stokowski types, the tyrants, It's changed. I mean, classical music has changed dramatically, but back in those days, maestros, had this kind of aura around them. And yes, many of them were quite scary. Nowadays, for me, most of maestros that I know are the ones that you see kind of in that Seinfeld episode.
Right. Well, so do you never insist that anyone refers to you as Maestro?
I've tried, but, I started with my family and my kids. And they kind of got the same look that Elaine gave the Maestros. Like, are you serious? The person that really changed that was Leonard Bernstein. Everybody called him Lenny. And I think maestros nowadays are a little bit more approachable. And we go out in the community and, we just happen to be in front of an orchestra with a stick.
Right. But I think I want to talk about that to start us off, is that you're the conductor of the Nashville Symphony, but no, your actual title is music director. I think a lot of people, perhaps those who didn't grow up with the symphony orchestra like I did, have a perception that you're just the guy up there waving a stick. But talk about what you actually do.
Well, in reality, conducting the orchestra is about 5% of what I do. Throughout the season, I conduct different concerts. We have pops and classical music and outdoors, but we have a lot of guest conductors that come in and guest artists and soloists that come from all over the world. Most of the job that I do really has to do with programming. A lot of what I do is putting the season together, choosing the individual pieces, where they go in every single program, in every concert, scheduling, hiring the guest conductors and hiring the guest artists. Of course, being a spokesperson for the orchestra, going out into the community, doing, interviews like this one. A lot of fundraising, of course, because we do depend on not only ticket sales, but on the generosity of our community. And we are grateful that we live in Nashville, where, we have the wonderful title of Music City. So when I go out and I say music is important, they look at me and say, well, duh, this is Nashville, of course.
Right. It pays our bills.
It's such a great thing because everybody knows somebody who is in the business, whether it's the Nashville Symphony or whether it's the honky tonks or whether it's the studios. I mean, everybody, either a neighbor or family member, they're totally involved with music. So over my time here, 17 years, it has been amazing to not only get to know the community. My kids grew up here. They went to school here. And I mean, this has become a home for almost now 20 years. So I'm delighted of the opportunity that I got here. Yeah, the conducting part is a very small part of of what I do, and it's what I actually cherish the most.
And it is obviously crucial. I heard you on a podcast with the Nashville Public Library say that you feel like conducting is the only proof of telepathy that exists.
Well, first of all, it's a two-way conversation between me and the musicians and vice versa. And a lot of what we do, I mean, that doesn't really come from the stick. I'll talk to most players. It comes from the eyes and actually from this area. So it's very easy. I mean, I can prove it to you. If I looked at you like this, you know exactly what I'm thinking. You know, probably you got that look from Eschenbach or from Commissiona. So a lot of what conductors do is we have this repertoire of facial expressions and our arms and our stick technique that we try to communicate what we want from the music. And it happens in the moment. But at the same time, like anything, there has to be that chemistry. I get in front of them and all of a sudden everything clicks. So all of these things that you dream about, even for a couple of years, learning and preparing a score, it can all go out the window when you get in front of an orchestra, just because, you know, the reality of it is like, no, that's not going to work. This is going to work better, whatever the players are providing. So that's why I said it's a two-way street.
Well, given that you have conducted across the country and all around the world at this point, what sets the Nashville Symphony apart for you?
I go back to the Music City aspect of it. So one of the great things that I think makes it attractive for musicians, for top quality musicians to come to Nashville, is the fact that besides the orchestra, they know that they're going to have a very, very fulfilling musical life outside of the concert hall, outside of the Schermerhorn Symphony Center. Because, again, we have the studios, we have all of the jingles that get produced here, all of the music that is taking place within a few blocks of where I am. Here in Nashville, our season allows for the players to have a life outside of the Nashville Symphony. And again, because the quality of music making here, it's so top-notch, world-class. And I think that it is definitely one of the things that attracts musicians when we have an audition, which we have to advertise worldwide. I think that's why players come to Nashville, because they realize that it's not just going to be playing Beethoven and Brahms. I mean, musicians now graduating from the great conservatories speak every musical language of every genre. And they welcome that opportunity. So they go and they think, oh, you want to play Charleston? Absolutely. You want to play jazz? No problem. You want to play country music from 1928? No problem. They know what that is and they welcome it.
And that's something that I really want you to address too, is for people who've lived in Nashville since before your tenure. This is now a very different symphony than the one from 20 years ago. The repertoire is different. The programming is different. Talk about the changes that you made and why.
Fortunately, it's not your grandfather's symphony. And it shouldn't be. We have evolved. And we have to, because the choices and the offerings that we have, especially in a town like this, and as I said, at the very high quality, we have to make sure that we offer something that is meaningful to the city of Nashville. So just playing the classical music of the past, of Beethoven and Brahms, that doesn't cut it anymore. We can do that, but we have to look at what's happening in the present. So that also makes it that it attracts new audiences to come into the hall, give them an excuse to come and listen, whether we're doing a show with a hip hop artist or whether we're doing a show with a rock and roll artist or whether we're doing movies, which we do a lot of, you know. So that brings different people that may say, you know what, the orchestra has never been for me, but I want to go check it out. And then they come in through the doors and they say, you know what, where has this been all my life? And just getting them to the door is enough, because they want to explore more. They introduce not only, their children, their family, but they get their neighbors. So we need to make sure that we are relevant, because if we stay just looking in the past, we will become museum pieces. And I am very proud of the fact that ever since we got here, with the opening of the hall in 2006, we have taken the opportunity to make it a symphony orchestra for the 21st century.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to get into some of the incredible accomplishments during your tenure. You yourself have won 6 Grammys. The symphony has won 11 during your tenure. You've done over 24 original commissions with people like Ben Folds, Bela Fleck. I mean, gosh, he did a concerto for the banjo. Talk a little bit about those incredible experiences you've had. Is there a favorite celebrity that you've gotten to play alongside while you've been here?
All of the above. And I cannot stress this enough. One of the greatest blessings of living in Nashville is that I become very good friends with so much of the musical royalty here in
Drop
Nashville.
names, drop names, drop
Oh,
names.
listen, if you mentioned Ben Folds and Bela Fleck and Edgar Meyer and Taylor Swift. I mean, I've become connected to them when I first got here. And again, remember when I first got here, I didn't know much about it. I learned a lot of it from my daughters. They were the ones that were kind of like keeping me up to date and introducing me. I remember the first time I heard Rascal Flatts and I met them and I didn't know who they were. And my kids like, oh my God, do you know who these guys are? And of course, little by little, I started realizing. So getting the chance to get to know these people, I always have to look for an excuse to share the stage with them. Because let's face it, these are the top players in their musical genre. Why wouldn't I want me and the orchestra be part of that?
Yeah.
So for me, that has been, I would say, one of the great opportunities that you don't get somewhere else because this is still a small town. I love the fact that even with all the craziness that we're dealing with now, it still has the feeling of a small town.
I'm glad that you brought up the community. I know that the symphony also is trying to do more and more each year to bring our communities into the symphony, especially for people who might not be able to access it due to financial barriers or other things going on in their lives. I noticed that this year, your destination for the symphony is Antioch. Tell us a little bit about what that's going to be like and what folks can expect from it.
We have to get out of the hall. I mean, we have, first of all, one of the greatest concert halls on the face of this earth. Let's face it. If you've ever been at the Schermerhorn, it is, in my opinion, probably the greatest concert hall built in the last 25 years. Everywhere I go is a step down for me. There's no comparison to the beauty and, more importantly, the acoustics of the hall. It is a hall worthy of Nashville, of Music City. But we do have to branch out. And for some of these communities that sometimes they're a little far away, and we bring a concert there and we bring kind of a light music program, the stuff that maybe you learn. I mean, like myself, I learned classical music through cartoons, through Bugs Bunny. That's where I learned my classical music. I was not as lucky as you that had, parents playing in an orchestra. I come from a non-musical family. Nobody in my family even knows how to read music except for my two daughters, So I learned my classical music, through cartoons and Bugs Bunny. But for those audiences, it's like we bring the orchestra and we want them to feel comfortable because this idea, and it's not only with classical music, it's with any high art. There's always this idea that, this is not for me and I've never, give me a break. All you need is a pair of ears. That's all. Go and enjoy it. And I promise you, I mean, you're going to ask yourself, why hasn't this been a part of my life? It happened to me. I come from Nicaragua and Costa Rica, and you would never call those countries, the meccas of classical music. And look at where I am. All I needed was to be exposed to it. That's it. Just like when I came to Nashville, I needed to be exposed to all of the great music that is happening here. I had to be open to experience that. And let's face it, not all of it speaks to me. I mean, how boring that we all like the same things. Of course not. We're all different people. But if you open your mind and give yourself the opportunity, you might find something that has been missing in your life. The orchestra has all sorts of programs, especially for young people, for students, that give very heavily discounted tickets because in the end, remember, we're a nonprofit and we want to make sure that our first goal is to service our community. And going to Antioch is a big part of it. We have to get out of our beautiful home and go visit other places and invite them to be part of the Nashville Symphony family.
I love that you said that people are going to find something inside the music that speaks to them. A great example is coming up next month on February 28th and March 3rd. Folks can come out and see you conduct Tchaikovsky's Fifth Symphony. And in the second movement, there might be something that people recognize, like maybe from John Denver.
Yeah, and it's not the first time that pop artists borrowed a great melody.
Right. So the horn line in the second movement is the first few notes of Annie's song.
And remember, that symphony was written in the 1870s. I mean, it's over 100 years later that John Denver, I guess, was inspired by it. And by the way, back in the day, the greatest homage you can give another artist was to copy them. Mozart copied Beethoven and vice versa. I mean, it was the greatest honor you can give somebody when you borrowed one of their tunes. Fast forward, nowadays you get into copyright issues.
Right. I mean, you could have ended up in a band yourself. You were a percussion major. And I find this really interesting because, again, I've heard you say that, as a former drummer, it allows you to love all kinds of music, which is the complete opposite of my mother, who grew up playing classical music in a classical music family and cannot listen to pop music or rock music because the four on the floor drums distract her. It's very interesting to me. So talk about how your love for rhythm actually enhances what you do?
Well, first, I wanted to be a violinist originally when I joined the Youth Symphony in Costa Rica. And I think there may have been a girl involved or something. But the day that they had the aptitude test, it was a long line. And I didn't like standing in line. So next door, there was this line with two kids. And, it said percussion. I was like, what is that? And I went in and, drums. And they gave me a couple of sticks. And they went, go like this, click, click. And I went, click, click, you're in.
Yay!
And I never looked back. And from the back of the orchestra, you get a great view of what a conductor does. And I guess I just, at one point, dropped the stick and moved to the front. I mean, that was my journey. And having good rhythm for a conductor is imperative. I mean, you're kind of like a traffic cop and kind of a living metronome. So having very good rhythm helps a lot. And I think it was just very natural. And the fact, you mentioned my love for all types of music, the fact that as a drummer, you play everything from merengue and salsa to cumbia to rock and roll and heavy metal.
Right.
And somewhere in the middle, you have Beethoven. So I guess that curiosity, that artistic curiosity was always in me and still is, where I have to be honest. I mean, if all I conducted Beethoven, Brahms, and Stravinsky, as much as I love it, I would be very bored. I need more. I need to explore. And by the way, not everything new that I do is successful. I mean, that would be naive to think that not everything Mozart wrote was successful.
Well, we were talking about Tchaikovsky's Fifth earlier. That was generally considered to be a massive failure when it came out.
The best example is the great opera Carmen, which is probably the greatest, most well-known opera. Everybody who's never even been to the opera can hum almost every tune from that opera. They know it just by heart. And trust me, check it out. Just go on YouTube, click any random, and you'll recognize the tune. And that was one of the greatest fiascos, so much so that it was supposed to have 20 performances. After 2 performances, it was shut down. And the composer, Georges Bizet, became so depressed that he died, like within a couple of weeks, looking that this was a failure. He never saw his opera become the most popular opera on the face of this earth. And that's such a shame.
It's crazy. And I don't think we allow failure that same way now. Like, I do wonder if some of, like, let's pick an album that was utterly destroyed by the press. Is that something that 150 years from now, people are going to be listening to as a masterpiece?
We're living in this kind of like immediate gratification type thing and then our attention span obviously is not even the same that it was even 5 years ago. I would say after COVID, after the pandemic, our attention span has gotten even smaller, which is unfortunate. I mean, let's face it. But I do believe that the great stuff will always survive. I do believe that by heart, because even when you think it may take time, music is a living organism, like any art, it has to evolve. Now may not be the time for that music to be appreciated, but fast forward 20, 50, 100 years, it may say, this is it. And that's where many great composers really hit the nail. These are people that we haven't caught up with them. They're such geniuses that whatever they had in their mind, we're still not there as human beings.
I think that's a really good message for any of our struggling musician listeners, that you just never know.
And it applies to literature, art, everything. And a lot of it is just, again, where you are as people. I mean, people write music that you may think is relevant today, but they may not realize that they're too far ahead of us. And we just need time to get there.
That's such a cool perspective. Well, you brought it up, so I'm going to ask you about it. You've definitely survived a couple of calamities during your time here. There was the flood in 2010, and then obviously making it through the pandemic, during which you yourself, along with a lot of your musicians, were furloughed. How have these debacles strengthened your ensemble and your relationship with this specific group of musicians?
Well, we're in it together. That was the first thing. I mean, when this happened, first of all, these are literally acts of God. I mean, this was not something that had to do with somebody doing something wrong. No, we were thrusted into this reality that we have to get out, and things looked very, very bleak. In the end, it became a lot of it about survival, which is not something that you want to be dealing with. I mean, it's about making it to the next day. I do have to say, though, that we did have the right people in place, not only in our staff, but on the board. And I can never stress this enough. Nashville, they came out with their generosity and basically, gave us a lifeline. And I mean, we're still not out of the woods, by the way. I mean, and nobody is. I mean, we're still dealing with a little bit of this pandemic hangover where everybody's trying to get audiences back and into live performances and what have you. During the pandemic, when I used to come to my office, to hear the silence in this town, I'm only a block away from Broadway.
Right.
I mean, I guess this is what the zombie apocalypse will be like.
Yeah.
It
It was
was
so
beyond
surreal.
eerie. But I am actually very proud of the fact that not only we've had these great high moments with our Grammys and the recordings and our audiences and the great concert hall, but God knows we've also had, our challenges, and I'm very proud that we came out of it, I think, stronger. But I do have to say that we're still not out of the woods, and I think I speak for everybody in the arts world all over, everywhere, because the pandemic really changed a lot of, habits. People change their habits, and we have to make sure to tell them that nothing equates the joy and the inspiration that gets from an actual live performance.
Yep. Folks really do need to get down there and see y'all, especially as you're rounding the curve into your last few performances. So much going on between now and May, when you'll be delivering your final performance, which is actually going to be sort of the opposite of a zombie apocalypse silence. You're doing Mahler 8. It's the Symphony of 1,000. I think that's just like you wanted as many people on stage with you as humanly possible, maybe for your final show. Talk about that piece of music for people.
I wanted to celebrate with everybody. It is called the Symphony of 1,000 because it has been done with sometimes even 1,000 people.
Wow.
It has 2 choirs, a massive orchestra, children's choir, 8 vocal soloists, the kitchen sink, you name it. It has everything in it. It is, I think, the closest thing that you can think of, symphonically, to like Barnum and Bailey. It is a spectacle. For my last concert, I didn't only want to go out with a bang, literally. But at the same time, I wanted to go out not only with the wonderful musicians of the Nashville Symphony, but also with the wonderful singers from the Nashville Symphony Chorus.
Well, you're still going to be around as the laureate. What does that mean? How many times a year are you hoping to make it back? Do you just get to sort of show up and be like, give me the stick?
Well, something like that, still having the title. I mean, and laureate feels like, I'm not old enough for that.
Right.
It feels like something, but I am excited. And so what happens is, you do realize that as we speak, the orchestra is in a search for my successor. Mm-hmm. Right now, they're in the process of, screening potential people that may take over the music director position. So for the next couple of years, the orchestra, I guess, will be having, a beauty pageant, which will be exciting for audiences to really see all of these different people come in with different backgrounds, see which ones have that click. Mm-hmm. That, I can promise you this, and I'm not giving anything away. If you see somebody that first time and then you see them come a second time, yeah, they're definitely being considered.
That's a good sign.
And if you see somebody one time and then you never see them again, it means that, it didn't click. So during that time, to give the orchestra a little bit of artistic stability, I will be around for the next couple of seasons for 4 or 5 weeks, where I'll be conducting, a big chunk of the season, helping them with any advisor that they may need. I have nothing to do with the search.
But let's say that you did. Let's say that you did have something to do with the search. Obviously, we want someone who will enjoy our community and be out and about as much as you've been. So if you were talking to prospective candidates, what would be your one non-musical, non-symphony related recommendation of something that they have to check out here in Nashville before they make their decision?
You have to be a part of this community. That's not negotiable. In this day and age of the jet-setting maestros.
But where would you tell them to go?
Literally, just around here, around the hall, just walk 5 blocks either way. You're going to get hit with a lot of what Nashville is all about. And then as you stretch out more, if you're going to Franklin, you're going to Hendersonville, and the beauty of some of those places. For me, it's all about you have to embrace Nashville. Because if you do that, and I'm very proud of and very honored of this, the city will embrace you back.
Thank you for everything you've given our city. And again, folks, get out there and see one of these upcoming shows between now and the end of the season, whether Giancarlo is conducting or not. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
That's all for today here on CityCast Nashville. Tickets for all the upcoming Nashville Symphony concerts, from Ode to Joy to The Lion King in concert, and of course, Giancarlo's final performances of Mahler's Symphony of 1,000 are available at nashvillesymphony.org. There's also a world premiere with Dolly Parton, but it's sold out. Still worth keeping an eye on, you never know. And hey, if you enjoyed the show, why not tell your friends? Rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our Hey Nashville newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Y'all take care of each other.